Broadcasting from an undisclosed location under a farm pond somewhere in the Midwest. Your host is Jim Crowley. This is Slickfish Radio.
Well, hi, everyone. Glad we are back. I am glad to be here. We are here for another edition of Slickfish Radio. For those of you joining us on Facebook Live, glad you are here. And for the other outlets that we'll be on later in the week, so excited. We got another great show coming up for you tonight. Our guest is going to be Drew Gill. Very excited to have Drew back on the show, especially after his big win. We're going to talk to him about that, about a whole bunch of other things. So we're just excited to have Drew back on the show. And a lot of great things coming up. We're actually going to be making, Drew and I are both going to be at a place coming up. We're going to talk to you about that. So before we get to all that stuff, I want to thank our friends over at Shields in Springfield, Illinois. Just there again last week, and the store is packed to, it's packed to the brim. I'm just telling you. So anything from fishing, hunting, any outdoor sports that you like. As a lot of you probably know, I like to ride a bike a lot as well, and Shields has an awesome bike department over there. They are fantastic. But anything you want, if you're in the area or just even driving through the state, if you're close to Springfield, Illinois, make sure you stop in at Shields. Just a great store with a lot of great folks there. Also, our friends from Lure Parts Online. At the end of the show, like I always do, we'll be giving out a discount code for Lure Parts Online. David George just dropped on. Hi, David. How are you? Glad to have you here. John Haas. Hi, John. How are you? And by John, I still have a hat for you. Just haven't got to the post office. Weather's been crummy, so I promise I will get that out to you. Also, our friends at Cask King. Hey, some big sales going on at Cask King right now. Donald Haas is on as well. Hi, Donald. How are you? Good evening. Glad to have you here. Hey, Donald, by the way, that was a great cigar that you sent me. I really do appreciate that. That was great. Our friends over at Mudhole got it really cool. I can tell you about it now. It's going to be probably the end of the month, but there's a new signature rod kit series coming out. That's mine. There's going to be 3 rods in this group that I put together with Mudhole. Real excited about that. So if you want to build rods like I do, we're actually going to be giving you 3 kits. One's going to be a bladed jig rod. The other one's going to be a Ned rig rod. And the other one is going to be a jerkbait topwater wacky worm rod. And so they're just going to be signature series kits. I have one out there. So does Matt Steffen. So does Terry Big Show Scroggin. So we each have 3 of those kits out there, and mine's going to be coming at the end of the month. We'll keep you posted. We might even be able to give a giveaway on that. I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Still, I was just told about this the other day. I'm pretty excited about it, that it's going to be coming out at the end of the month. So we'll let you know there. And as always, we are powered by our friends at Dakota Lithium. I'll also be giving you another discount code at the end of the show for Dakota Lithium. Just getting ready to go down the Precision Sonar in a couple weeks, and going to have my boat totally rigged up for the season with four Dakota Lithium batteries this year. I've got more power. I could probably power a small lodge somewhere. I've got that much power on this boat. I'm really looking forward to it. So we're excited with all you guys coming on. So make sure you got any questions or comments. Drew is a great guy. I'm so excited to have him here. We're going to be talking fishing, having a good time tonight. So proud of this young man. And since I'm talking about him, what the heck? Why not? Let's bring him in. Buddy, how are you?
Doing awesome, Jim. How are you?
Good. Are you catching up on your sleep? Because from what I've heard, you've been running a little ragged.
Yeah, it was a really busy first few months of the year, and now that I've gotten to get home and relax, get to hang out with everybody in Tulsa and in Birmingham for Red Crescent Classic, it's been a great last few weeks. Been able to get recuperated and get reorganized, and I'm ready for our second leg of the season starting next week at Dale Hollow.
Yeah, that's cool. And then we're gonna bring this up April 18th. Our friends at Precision Sonar are having their open house for their new facility, and that's in Benton, Kentucky. I'm gonna throw the address out there for you. I've seen this place already. I haven't seen it completed, but I was down there when they were building. It's a massive facility for Precision Sonar, and it's at 2222 US Highway 68 East. That is a new facility, and April 18th they're going to have an open house from 1 to 4. Drew's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Going to be a bunch of other folks there, and you've got to see this place, folks. If you have the opportunity and you want to see the best in the business right now, it's Sonar accessories and mounts. Precision Sonar is it, and when you see this building, you're going to realize how in-depth and how 100% these people are into giving us the best products. Now, Drew, you've traveled across the country put that boat of yours through a lot, and you've been running those mounts for a long time, and they've served you well, haven't they?
Yeah, I've been running Precision mounts, Precision Sonar's brackets since before, I was even working with them as a sponsor. I've been running them since I had them on my '01 Ranger in high school, and their mounts are the best in the business, and they're really great to work with. They're awesome people. It's even though it's a big facility and they have a wide array of very custom fabricated products. It's really not a big company in terms of the number of people that work there.
Right.
Precision is a close knit group of individuals, and they follow me everywhere I go throughout the year, and and I really appreciate their support. And yeah, make sure to come out and hang out. That'll be our off day for the invitational that week. So it'll be me, Keith Poche, Chris Grow will be there. A whole bunch of other guys that are fishing. Our pro circuit event on Kentucky Lake that week will be hanging out, and it'll be a good time and give you an opportunity to see a lot of the cool new stuff they're coming out with, because they're really getting pretty innovative with what they're doing, and it's something that I look to using on my new boat that's coming in a few weeks to truly be an advantage in what I do.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. I've never had mounts of this quality on my boat, and I've got a double mount going up front, and I've got a new one going in dash. And what I found really cool about this is when I talked with Ryan Kirkpatrick over there, it's really neat. You make one call, and they can literally set up everything. They custom. It doesn't matter what boat you have. They can custom the mounts and custom how they fit everything. And there's a lot more products that they carry too. So if you guys are available, anybody's available and in that area to come to an open house, you're going to see that Precision Sonar is a lot more than just brackets and mounts. They're not only are they top of the line at what they do, but you're going to see so many other products that they have, and they're going to be able to install. For me, it's kind of like being a kid in a candy store, man. When I was down there the last time, I'm like, I want that. I think I have that. Oh, I've never had that before. I think I'll have that.
Yeah, no doubt. And the biggest misconception with learning and and using forward facing sonar is everyone looks at it, the first thing they do is look at it and go, this is a totally different skill. This is box B. Box A is how I've always fished. Box B is live scope or forward facing sonar. But the real issue there is thinking that it's separated from what you do, or that it's a totally different skill or art. What it does is it's an efficiency machine and it's an information machine. It gives me access to knowing all of the facts of every interaction that I have with fish, with their environment, with their forage, with the contours and the different depth changes that they relate to throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. And it over time it allows me to build a really deep understanding of how bass use different things, different pieces of cover, different contours, and how they address different kinds of forage throughout the year on different places around the country. And over time, what it's doing is it's building this memory bank of so much factual information. And that's the key word there, is factual information. Prior to forward facing sonar, we were only privy to the information that we could access through our generally cruder maps and our lower levels of technology, or even before that, the ability to use those through just our eyes and our perception. That was what we were privy to, is everything we could see and everything we could perceive on the end of the line, whether that be a bite, cover, whatever. And that was all we had to go off of. And so it was a much more complex process of, trying a million different things and potentially jeopardizing your entire week by trying the wrong thing at the wrong time and never figuring it out. And it was a lot more of a, what I'll say, um, is it was a lot more of a tapestry of an art than it was a practical direct skill. You're seeing guys that are truly learning and understanding fish behavior, and now that they're given the ability to understand it in the rich way that they do, they're dominating everybody every tournament, because they can quickly assess the situation, watch how the bass are using their environment and what forage they're relating to, and take that information and apply it all over the fishery, because they understand how to read their maps and their contours, and they combine that with a deep understanding of fish behavior itself and how these fish address the scenarios that they're in. And they were repeating this process more often than anyone that could be guessing could repeat it. And they're doing it way more efficiently than anyone that's guessing could do it, because of the fact that they're seeing every interaction, they're maximizing every opportunity, they're taking what we thought was a field of grass that only had 6 or 7 fish in it, which in actuality has 25 or 30 fish in it, and they're taking it and they're maximizing every opportunity. They're taking something little and extrapolating it, or they're taking one bite or one area and turning it into 6, 7, 8, a dozen different areas that are very similar because they're able to understand why it was what it was. Back when we were fishing, in our earlier system, let's say you're going down a stretch of docks and you're skipping walkways, and you've decided you're going to skip walkways for the next hour, hour and a half. 20 minutes in, you skip up under this walkway. Don't one eats it. You set the hook. You catch a 5-pounder, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, they're on walkways. This is awesome." What you didn't see was the fact that there was a concrete block under that walkway that you missed by 3 feet, and you threw it up by that concrete block, got a bite, caught it, and now you've convinced yourself that there is, a pattern of catching 5-pounders on walkways. When in actuality, what you need to be looking for is big, single, isolated targets in 6 to 10 feet of water. And it just so happened that one was under a walkway. And now I've convinced myself that fish wanted to be on a walkway when in actuality they want to be on big concrete blocks or big rocks. And the issue is as people, we naturally want to attribute a why to what we're doing because the
Sure.
easiest things to understand are what, when, where, and how. Those are always the most tangible facts of any scenario in life or in fishing. The why is always the most mysterious. And as people, we naturally want to know that why because of how hard it is to understand. And so for a long time, a lot of times we attributed a why arbitrarily to what we did when, realistically, that why may or may not have actually existed. And so, we were able to lead ourselves astray just because of the fact that the only way we had of getting closer to why was what we could see and perceive with our eyes unaided and what we could perceive with our rod. But ultimately that left gaps, that left information gaps. And, it wasn't a foolproof process. It was much more of a roundabout experimentation process. Now it's becoming much more of an actual skill process, which means that, you're like anything in life, like bass fishing has been for a long time. Now it's even more direct, but the best get better. And now we're seeing it in a very extreme light because a dozen people in the sport right now, in whatever series they're fishing, are walking through everyone because of the fact that they understand fish behavior and they understand how to repeat processes over and over and over again because they know what's different about what they're doing and they know how to find it. And that's something that was a tangible skill beforehand, but it was something that was much harder to replicate because of the fact that we just had information gaps. We had places, that we had a lapse in our ability to truly have all the facts. And now that we have all the facts, the ones that understand what the facts mean are dominating everyone, and it's not even close. And the amount of tangible fact that we can learn about bass just due to being able to watch them in their everyday environment is something that's irreplaceable. I'm going to go to the extent to say that other than on your sand fisheries, largemouth are more pelagic than smallmouth, just because of the fact that the difference between largemouth and smallmouth is in most of your major largemouth fisheries, their primary forage species is threadfin shad. Threadfin are a suspended bait fish. And when a bait fish that is their primary, so it's all about whatever the primary forage is in a fishery, meaning the highest percentage of the forage, whatever that is what I want to be focusing on. And as a result, when I isolate what I think the primary forage is, I'm going to think about what I think bass feeding on that type of forage would be thinking. So if, let's say I'm on a lake where I feel as though their primary forage is bluegill, I'm going to think in a totally different manner than I'm thinking when I think about a fishery where their primary forage is shad. Even if the fishery sets up the same, even if it's largemouth in both scenarios, I'm going to think totally differently because they're feeding on a different forage or relating to a different type of forage. In largemouth, when I say pelagic, I don't necessarily mean that they migrate a ton. Smallmouth do that more than largemouth on most fisheries, but smallmouth tend to be more of a migrate and then set up on a home area, and then migrate, set up on a home area, migrate, set up on a home area. Much more often, largemouth will just suspend. And doesn't necessarily mean that they're swimming 20 miles overnight and then pulling up somewhere else and suspending somewhere else, but they are much more suspending than smallmouth are for the most part. Smallmouth more often want to relate to some sort of of cover. A lot of times we assumed that, in really clean water, bass like to suspend more, and that on a lot of reservoirs that can be true. But bass suspend just as much in dirty fisheries as they do in clean fisheries. It's just about what layer of the water column they want to use. In dirty fisheries, if they want to suspend, they generally have to use that upper layer of the water column, just because that's the layer that most of the bait and microorganisms in the lake use, and that's where they can physically see enough to feel like they can navigate their environment effectively without having to have a physical reference. Because most of the fish you catch on dirty fisheries that are deeper are around some sort of physical reference, like a piece of cover or something on the bottom that allows them to know where they're at in their environment. The only way for them to know where they're at in their environment, other than having a physical piece of cover directly around, is being really high in the water column. So, that's one of the big differences you see for sure.
And as always, it comes down to food, and what kind of forage it is. No, that makes perfect sense. We're going to take a little bit of a break. I want to let everybody know that when we let Drew go at the end of this, we're going to be giving away a pair of Fish 419 sunglasses. We're also going to be giving away some of the new pinpoint minnows that we have here, Bass Academy pinpoint minnows from Lure Parts Online. But first, we're going to take a break, and then Drew, I want to come back and talk to you about some bait choices that you've been using and going forward in the midst of all this other bait. So we're going to be back, as we always say, we'll be back in 2 and 2.
Located in Springfield, Illinois' largest selection of sports and sportswear, hunting, fishing, specialty shops and services, a 65-foot Ferris wheel, 16,000-gallon saltwater aquarium, and industry-leading knowledgeable employees. You don't take chances at Shields, ever. Go to shields.com.
At Lure Parts Online, we have everything you need to make your own lures, pour soft plastics, tie your own flies, build your own rods, and more. Easy ordering ensures you get your products quickly. You can build it all with Lure Parts Online.
Achieving affordable innovation through novel concepts and in-house ingenious designs. Cascading cost-effective e-commerce practices directly market to consumers, cutting costs by 30% or more on average. Affordable innovation, superior quality. CastKing.com.
Mudhole is your #1 resource for custom fishing rods. Mudhole is the world's largest supplier of rod building, tackle crafting supplies, and instruction. They have the best components and brands you trust. American Tackle, MHX, CRB, Pro Products, Fuji, REC, AFCO, Winthrop, and more. It's easy to build your next custom fishing rod at mudhole.com.
Believing quality is measured by lifespan and harnessing their unique chemistry and engineering know-how. Dakota Lithium lasts 4 times longer, powering your passion with an 11-year warranty. Find out more at dakotalithium.com.
There we go. Come here. Get in here. Yeah. Nice fish right there.
Hi, I'm Jim Crowley. Make sure you catch my show, Jim Crowley Outdoors, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, exclusively on Wired to Fish TV.
Look for Jim Crowley Outdoors on Wired to Fish TV on free ad-supported streaming TV, including Plex, that can be downloaded in the App Store at Apple TV, Roku, Samsung, and others. We are back with Drew Gill. And Drew, thanks again for being on the show. We've got a couple people chiming in here as we were gone. My buddy Vance Gordon, excellent show. Then thanks, Vance. Glad you're here. Rodney Hubbs, very interesting, Drew, about the suspending of largemouth. Yeah, great information. That's why I had him on. Now, when it comes to baits, so I take it, though, you still got to have a boatload of spinner baits and bladed jigs and other things like that. But what are some of your favorite baits? I know that a Nico rig has been really good for you. But what is, like, when you're setting up, when you've actually located fish, all right, you're like, there's fish here. What are a couple of baits that you're going to be going, that you're going to be targeting these fishes? There's like a series of 3 or 4 that you send them through, depending on what, or how do you set that up?
A jerkbait's extremely powerful in the wintertime, because the jerkbait has the ability to stop in place, not move, and you can draw them from long distances, which allows you to generally, due to the fact that you can stop and bring every fish in that immediate vicinity to the bait, you can really get a competitive bite with a jerkbait in a way that you can't get a lot of other baits to do in the wintertime, because you have that time frame to be able to draw them. An Alabama rig's another good one, obviously. And another one in the wintertime for me is a swim bait, whether that be a little bitty ballhead swim bait, or whether that be a 6-7 inch, big line through. Little swim bait is extremely deadly in the wintertime. And, when you're talking about all of these baits, really the biggest thing it comes down to in the winter is head size on your swim baits, A rig, whatever, Demiki rig, and then profile size of these baits. So in the wintertime, a lot of us want to immediately kind of jump to, I want wintertime means I want slow and I want little. And that's
Mhm.
not always the case. In the wintertime, generally, I want consistent in terms of the action. I don't necessarily need it to be stupid slow, but I need consistent. I don't want it to be extremely inconsistent in the action.
Right.
I don't want to go super hard and then
You
stop,
don't want it
or
real
kind
erratic.
of be
Yeah.
moderate and then go stupid hard again on the speed. And a big part of its profile. Largemouth, generally speaking, not saying that there's not times, this is bass fishing. There are times where fish can break the mold a little bit, but if we're chasing generalities and we're chasing, what should happen or what should be expected, that's what allows us to be consistent day in, day out, whether you're fishing tournaments and trying to do well or whether you're just trying to put more fish in the boat. I mean, chasing what makes sense or what the majority of the population should be doing is the best way for us to consistently put fish in the boat. And the biggest thing in the wintertime with largemouth is understanding the fact that their metabolism is far slower than it is in summertime, which means that they're more hesitant to commit. A lot of us, when we hear that, we kind of jump to the assumption that means they're going to go super slow and they eat something really little. That's not necessarily the truth. What they want to do is they want to make sure that when they expend energy, it's worth the effort. And really one of the best times of year for me to throw bigger profile baits is in the wintertime. Because in the wintertime, a lot of what I want to do is I want to convince a bass that his energy is worth being expended on whatever I'm trying to offer. So like right here is a bait that I really lean on a lot in the wintertime. This is a Bill Lewis Scope Stick 120. This is a big jerk bait. So like you can see it against my hand. I mean,
Yep.
I'm 6'3". I've got really big hands, and this jerk bait's most of the length of my hand. These baits like that are really powerful in the wintertime, having a big profile bait that doesn't move through the water column at a mock rate of speed. The two biggest bags I've ever caught on a public lake have come over the last 4 months, on a public lake about an hour and a half from my house. That I caught 33.5 in December on that bait, and I caught 36.1 with my buddy Jack Dice a couple weeks ago. Public fishery, anybody can put their boat in there, and it's in the state of Illinois, and caught 2 bags over 30 pounds on that bait, which is something that just blew my mind. In terms of generating gigantic bites in cold water, bigger profile baits like a jerk bait that you can move slowly are really powerful. Versus baits that I'm going to be a little bit more consistent on, like a swim bait or an A rig. When I say a swim bait, I'm talking about your ball head style, ones you're going to reel nonstop. I'm going to lean a little bit smaller on the profile a lot of times because you're creating through the action and the consistency, you're generating the need for them to follow it through the consistency. And with an Alabama rig, really, it's the world's biggest finesse bait. I mean, it looks gigantic and gnarly and whatever, but really, generally, your swim baits are that small.
Right.
You're talking 3 to 4 inches. And so, with those, I lean a little bit smaller. And with my bigger swim baits or a glide bait, those big baits, those are ones that aren't a consistent action for me. They're kind of steady, and I'll kick it, reel and kick, reel kick, reel kick. And what I'm doing is I'm just getting that bait going, kicking it and making it turn, and then getting it going in, kicking it, making it turn. And for some reason, they react to that really well. But those are my go-tos in the winter. Pat says, what do I call cold water? So cold water, really, I'm talking about wintertime. I'm not talking about a specific water temperature. Fish will act in this manner in Florida in 58-degree water in the same manner that our fish around home act in 41-degree water. So we're talking about, the time of year being, when we start getting those true cold nights for whatever part of the country we're in, December, through, really through what I would call the true pre-spawn, when you get into that mid upper 50s range, anywhere between December and, the true pre-spawn, whenever we hit that point. So basically around here, it's kind of mid-March, late March. That's the range of, the year where I'm really leaning on those techniques heavily. And then we get into, around the spawn, talking about pre-spawn, spawn, Really, I'll lump the pre-spawn and the spawn together, and then I'd kind of lump the post-spawn and the summer together. Post-spawn's more like summer than it is like the spawn.
Mm-hmm.
But with pre-spawn and spawn, that is one time a year where I really focus heavily on baits that are, a lot of times I focus on baits that are bigger profile or near the bottom. And a lot of times too, this is the time of year where your spinnerbait's going to play, your chatterbait's going to play. Your crankbaits, shallower crankbaits are going to play. Your aggressive cover water presentations, which is really the angle of those baits. Those baits aren't appealing to high percentage bites; they're appealing to high percentage opportunities, and just trying to get some of them to bite. Whereas, with what I do, generally, I'm appealing a little bit more to trying to get the most bites possible, and I'll leave the finding fish up to me and not up to the bait. The finding fish is on me, and the catching fish is up to the bait itself. And so, if I'm going out trying to consistently catch big ones, I'm putting, consistently putting my bait in front of a fish on myself and not on a presentation that's just super efficient for efficiency's sake. So, pre-spawn, spawn, I'm talking like a jig, a shaky head. You're talking about, sometimes a drop shot with a short leader. And you start talking about a wacky worm. When you get really shallow, sometimes we're talking about a frog, popping style topwaters. A lot of people early in the spring like throwing a buzz bait with a big blade where they can reel it kind of slow, but it's a really big profile. And this is the time of year where I think glide baits and line through swim baits are at their most effective. This is generally the time of year where fish are most heavily related to big profile forage, because generally speaking, most of the biggest forage in a lake that bass will consistently feed on, meaning most of your fisheries, that's bluegill and that's a gizzard shad. Most of those fish, or those populations of bluegill and gizzard shad, generally relate to the bank the most in that time of year, and so that's when I'm really focusing on big baits. And that's a really big part of my rotation in the pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn to summer. So this is really kind of two directions. We're talking shallow and we're talking deep. Post-spawn, my focus is going to be shallow the entire time in what we'll call the post-spawn range, which is, when they're guarding fry, whatever else. That's when I'm going to be really heavily top water, and I'm going to be really heavy on baits that fall very slowly. So we're talking about a wacky worm. A lot of people still like throwing a fluke. Things like that, where I want a bait that stays near the cover and doesn't get to the bottom at a rapid rate of speed, because that's when fish are really keyed in on. You got fry garters. Generally, you've got a shad spawn going on in a lot of fisheries, and you got a bluegill spawn going on. So you've got a lot of, really what we'll call vertical, type forage, where they're kind of focusing on chasing it down and eating it near the surface. And so that's when I'll lean to, that, like I said, that wacky rig, that fluke, your prop baits, your popping topwaters, your frogs. I'm really topwater heavy in the post spawn.
Yep.
For whatever reason, most of your big largemouth up shallow in May and June generally relate to a topwater better than they relate to any other bait. And here's the big thing with the topwater in the summer. And this goes through the whole summer with shallow fish. What we're seeing with bait selection is we're seeing that most of our hard baits that are the most effective are almost all hard baits that you can stop. That you can stop, and that bait will not change where it's at in the water column just because you made it not move any more toward the boat. So we're talking, our most effective hard baits in terms of percentage of the time that it turns a fish into a bite are jerk baits and topwaters. And topwaters are so effective because this is something that we don't really view because it's so different from everything else. But when you think about it through this light, just open your mind for a second. What is different between a jerk bait and a walking topwater? It is a bait that has a slashing cadence that you can stop at any time, and it will continue to stay in the place that you stopped it in. Right. It allows the fish to play with his mind a little bit. And, really, those are the same. They're the same exact presentation.
All you're changing is a little bit. I have said for years, and I even gave some seminars on it this year and actually last year, about I love throwing a jerk bait. It doesn't, and I do, and one of the reasons is because that's one of the baits you have, in my opinion, you have such a great triggering aspect in that lure that a fish can follow it for a while. You can change that or just pop back or throw slack back to that line just ever so slightly, and that can cause that fish. I mean, smallmouth are suckers for them. They're absolute suckers for them, and largemouth can be too. But it's one. I've always said there's two baits that intimidate bass fishermen the most: a heavy cover jig and a jerkbait. And because they're not really sure, still at this point, there's a lot of people who just they don't have a lot of confidence in it. And those are two baits that not only get a ton of bites, but they're also two baits that you can make react to them a lot. And it sounds like you're seeing exactly that on forward-facing sonar.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got to take. We've got a winner here, David Schroeder. There you go. And David, you're exactly right. David, you win the pair of Fish 419 Slickfish glasses. Matthew 419, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Thanks, Drew, to qualify.
Thanks, David.
There. So, David, I'll tell you what, after the show, we'll get a hold of you or private message me on Facebook. I'll get your address, and I will have Fish 419 send you a brand new, and you get a case with that. You get a cleaning cloth. I think get some decals. It's a nice little package of stuff from Fish 419. So thank you, David. Really do appreciate that. Drew, before we let you go, and with all the stuff you got coming up, thank you so much for all the insight and all the information today. I love that solid information stuff because as we continue as anglers, things are going to always continue to evolve. That's just how the sport's going to be. Have you seen? Let me ask you this question before I let you go. Have you seen fish changing at all from when you started on how they react to forward-facing sonar? Because I hear what people say out there. I don't care about what I hear. I want to know from somebody who does it a lot. Have you seen fish react to it negatively, or have you seen a fish react to it differently than when you first started?
In terms of the ease of being able to catch most of these suspended bass that we fish for now that we weren't able to fish for before effectively, it is definitely harder to catch them now than it was 2 or 3 years ago. But
Okay.
it's not specifically related to, a lot of people are like, oh, it's because they're feeling the transducer beam or they're purely relating to the sound of the transducer, and that's what's ruining it for us. One, the issues here are I can't shout directly at you in an open environment without everyone around in every direction hearing what I'm saying at you. Sound is not pointable in this sense. You cannot just direct sound in an open environment. That's not how it works. And two, the other thing is that our sound that we're putting out with this transducer extends far beyond how far our screen can see. I mean, this sound is audible. You can perceive it with your ears up to almost 400 feet away from the boat.
Wow.
So if this was true, we would be able to just pan around and ruin bass fishing for ourselves in every direction within 400 feet of our boat. And if these fish were purely relating to this sound that they're hearing and getting, getting, I guess, adjusted to the sound and feeling like they're being fished for every time they hear the sound, you would be able to effectively blow them away from the boat from a far further distance than you really are perceiving on just your screen. And the other thing too is it's kind of the Pavlov dog scenario. The experiment with Pavlov was he would ring a bell and he'd feed the dogs, and eventually the dogs got conditioned to every time they heard the bell rung, they expected to be fed. But the issue with bass and with any other creature is that if you want to get true conditioning, you have to do the stimulus and you have to give them the, you have to give them the reward every single time you do it. Otherwise, you don't build a strong connection between the sound and the response, or I guess not response, but the sound and the given situation. It might work if we were to leave our graphs off and then turn them on, immediately throw at a fish, and then turn them off immediately after throwing at that fish. And the issue is really what we're doing is we're continually producing a stream of sound all around us, and it's not controllable to where not every time that fish hears that sound is he getting a bait put in his face. Maybe if we take all the other, this would never work in a situation where there's multiple fish in a close vicinity. This concept would never work fishing around lots of cover, where there's lots of echoes and things like that, lots of, things for the sound to bounce off of and reverberate. And, this concept really could only ever work if you shut it off pointed at one specific fish that was suspended, that was around no other targets and no other fish, threw at it, and then shut it off immediately afterwards, and then repeated that process a ton of times. And the issue is one, not every time does the fish hear the sound and get thrown at. Two, not every time does the fish hear that sound and there's even someone attempting to fish for them. A lot of times, let's say we're fishing in a creek or a pocket. Let's say we're fishing on like where I'm going next week, Dale Hollow, on a very rocky reservoir with very steep contours. And I'm pointing that transducer around and it's emitting sound in every direction with very hard objects that it's bouncing off of and all over the place. I may have my transducer on and be pitching a jig at laydowns, and there's a fish, 40 yards behind me to my right that's hearing the sound, and he doesn't get fished for even once in that whole time. And so really what we're seeing a lot is not necessarily transducers affecting fish. We're seeing boat pressure affecting fish. Fish know when your boat is there. Yep. And they're not dumb in terms of knowing what's in their environment, what's around them. They're designed to live in that aquatic environment that they live in. And do you really think that 70 feet away from them, they don't know that your 21-foot fiberglass boat is sitting there with your water blender and the water spinning around, blowing water everywhere? You got 3 transducers on pinging, you're walking around the boat. They know you're there. The difference is that a bass is a predator. He's not naturally afraid. What I'll say is that bass aren't naturally afraid of you. They're extremely curious creatures. We have to condition them to not want to be around a boat. And, so we're seeing bass being a little bit more wary of wanting to be around boats, but that takes a lot of really direct pressure in a short interval of time for there to be an extreme, I'd say, awareness in the population to boat pressure. So yes, they're starting to react to boat pressure too, but really, I'm a big believer in don't get too worked up about a lot of that if you can avoid it, because ultimately there's just too many variables to make it, we're talking about the real outdoor environment. We're not talking about in a lab or in a tank. There's too many variables in their environment for you to think that, your specific interaction with those fish is really bothering them to an extent that you can't catch them. Because I can tell you this, I would say the vast majority of fish that I weigh on forward-facing sonar all year are within 40 feet of the boat. Yep. And that's the same way now as it was 2 years ago. Yep. And these fish really, they're waiting for you to ruin it for yourself, essentially. They are just about as obliging as you're willing to make them be, but you really got to focus on spending more time figuring out what they're doing, why they're there, and what they're willing to eat, and less time worrying about all the sound you're emitting from the boat or whatever. Don't get me wrong, if you can shut off other transducers that you're not using, by all means do it.
Right.
But, really what you got to be focusing on more are the controllable variables. You can't control whether your boat's around them. You have to have your boat around them to catch them. So focus on the controllables, focus on, yes, keeping your controllable sound to a minimum, focus on making your presentations as effective and as, I guess, realistic as possible. Get your bait to them doing what you want the bait to be doing all the way back to the boat. Don't just drop it on their head and then it's sinking down to them and, I kick it flat now. I had my swim bait fall down on his head until he saw it and then, now it's swimming flat. That makes no sense. Just control the controllable things that you have within your power to understand, and keep the stuff that you can't control, like whether your boat's around them, out of it.
And it still comes back to the basis of fishing: control what you can control.
Yep. And everything else, you got to just kind of forget about it. Don't get me wrong. Try to understand it if you can understand it, but ultimately, if you can't control it, you don't really need to fret about it.
Drew, thanks, buddy. Where, before we let you go, where can they give out your social media stuff? Tell everybody where they can find you. Because mark my words, folks, that tournament that he just won will not be the last one. I'm looking forward to more education and more information from you. Hey, you and I are probably going to see each other a couple times this year. I'm sure
Jim.
We're going to see each other at Precision Sonar's open house. We're going to be, I know I'll run into you at ICAST. And I think next year, you and I both have an invite back to the high school conference.
Yeah. Unless I got something else going on that week, I'll probably be at the high school conference again. So
yeah, because that was always a great event too. So I'm looking forward to that. But tell everybody where they can find you on your socials and everything, so they can make sure they can stay tuned with everything you're up to.
Yeah, so if you guys want to keep up with my tournaments or just with my fishing conversation in general, make sure to check me out at Drew Gill Fishing on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you want to find me. You can find me under that. My Instagram and Facebook game right now is probably my most prevalent. My YouTube game's a little bit more lacking at the moment, but it's something I'm not on the back side of YouTube. I'm trying to be on the front side of it, so it's something that I'm looking to grow with time. It's just right now with my tournament schedule and things like that, it's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's something I'm looking to expand on. So don't let that scare you away. More content will be coming on that platform soon. But anywhere you want to find me under Drew Gill Fishing. I'd love to interact with you guys. If you want to reach out, talk fishing, whatever, I'm always free. So
I can tell you guys, for knowing Drew for a couple years now, is just one heck of a nice guy and always willing to talk fishing. And what you see there is what you get in person. This is how he is. He's just a really good guy. We've got a question from Rodney Hubbs here. He says, "Where are you taking off from Dale Hollow, if you're allowed to say?"
So we'll be going out of Sunset Marina. It's on the southeast end of the lake. It's by Birdstown, Tennessee. So that's where our event will be out of. I don't foresee the trailer policy coming into effect. If it does, it does. But I think that'll probably be where we'll be for every day of the tournament. And that's where, I believe that's where all of the festivities of the week will be going down. So make sure to come out and check us out. On the 13th and 14th, and the end of the knockout round and the championship round. We'll have everybody from the top 10 there hanging out, meeting everybody, signing autographs, and talking the day, talking the lake. So if you want to go out and you want to learn something more about a pretty cool lake or just hang out with everybody, it's an awesome opportunity.
Catching fish and kissing babies. There you go. That's what that's what you're going to be doing. Hey man, make sure you say hi to your dad for me. I always enjoy running into him when we see too, and so proud of you, man. So happy for you. Just I know you're going to keep up the good work. Just keep kicking fast, buddy. I'm just really happy for you, and thanks again for your time. We got one more thing
Really
here. For the record, Drew, we'll do fine in a Japanese interpretation contest. I don't know.
Man.
I don't know.
That was a conversation me and Gabe had on his 10 Horse Money podcast last night. So
okay.
It was a good time.
Awesome. Well, thanks, my friend. Hey, as always, buddy, God bless you. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Travel safe and keep up the great work, man.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you.
Okay. I want to thank all our friends at Shields in Springfield. Great store, great employees, always have what you need. Again, our friends at Lure Parts Online. I want to thank them very much. And while we're doing this, let's get to this. Now, if you go to Lure Parts Online, here, you decide you want to get something, put in this code, JC Outdoors 10. You will get 10% off of anything at Lure Parts Online. Also want to thank our friends at Cast King. Like I said, they have a sale going on right now. Their Bassinator reels, 50% off. It's a great reel, Go to Cast King right now. Anything else you want to get, put in this code JC52AFF. That's your code all the time for 20% off anything and everything at Cast King. Also want to thank our friends at Mudhole. Again, I'll let you know more information coming out soon on my signature series rod kits from Mudhole. I'm so excited about that. Best place for education and information when it comes to rod building is Mudhole. Also, our friends at Dakota Lithium. You looking at those great batteries? I'm going to help you out. Put in this code Slickfish10. If you decide to get a Dakota Lithium battery, you get 10% off your lithium battery orders. That's pretty cool from Dakota Lithium, the battery company that sponsors the sport of fishing, whether it be bass fishing or walleye fishing, more than any other battery company out there. Dakota Lithium, 11-year warranty, top of the line, great customer service. Batteries I run in my boat. Dakota Lithium. Put in that code Slickfish10 and you will get 10% off. Other than that, thank you for a great show. Thank Drew Gill again for being on the show. Thank all of you for our awesome, incredible audience. God bless you all. See you soon.